I would say if there was Afrikaner farmer genocide, I can bet you these three gentlemen would not be here, including...
The G20 is supposed to be a place of diplomacy, a place where world leaders sit down, calm tensions, and stabilize a chaotic global economy. But this year, it turned into a war zone because Donald Trump walked into the global spotlight and dropped one of the most explosive accusations the world has heard in years, claiming that white farmers in South Africa are victims of a government-backed genocide. The moment those words left his mouth, the international community froze, social media blew up, and South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, fired back instantly, turning the G20 summit into a full-scale diplomatic brawl. And today, we're breaking it all down. The accusation that shook the summit. Trump's comments weren't new. He had made similar statements years earlier, but this time it hit differently, because he made the remarks while several G20 leaders were gathered.
The strong partnership between Africa and the G20.
And reporters immediately pushed the South African delegation for responses. Trump referenced land issues, farm attacks, and political tensions in South Africa, framing the situation as a targeted campaign of violence against white farmers. To many global observers, it sounded like Trump was reviving a long-running, highly sensitive narrative that South African officials have repeatedly called false, exaggerated, or politically motivated. The timing was brutal, the stage was global, and South Africa wasn't about to let that narrative spread unchecked. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa strikes back. Within hours, President Ramaphosa held a fiery press conference, the kind he rarely delivers. His tone was controlled, but the message was ice cold. There is no genocide in South Africa, none. We reject this claim completely. He accused Trump of misunderstanding the country's complex history.
That is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa.
Oversimplifying a sensitive land debate and stirring panic with misinformation. South African ministers echoed Ramaphosa, calling the comments reckless, harmful, and irresponsible. And that's when the G20 atmosphere shifted. What was supposed to be a summit on global development suddenly became a geopolitical firefight. The international reaction, who sided with whom? The backlash didn't stop with South Africa. European diplomats called Trump's language dramatic and unhelpful. African Union officials said it was dangerous interference. Australian commentators argued that the US was oversimplifying a deeply rooted issue. But here's where it gets interesting. Some conservative American politicians and commentators backed Trump, claiming that he was highlighting an issue the media ignores. This created a global divide, not just between nations, but between political ideologies. The G20 became the battleground of two narratives. One claiming South Africa is hiding a violent crisis, the other claiming Trump is exaggerating for political gain. Both sides argued fiercely. Both sides accused the other of propaganda. And the G20 watched the sparks fly. How did this become a G20 issue? Because South Africa wasn't standing alone. Several African leaders, especially from countries facing similar land redistribution challenges, publicly supported Ramaphosa. They argued that Trump's remarks risked damaging Africa's global image, causing fear among investors, igniting racial narratives that the continent has been trying to move past.
Allow them to take land.
No.
Do allow them to take land.
Nobody can.
But the moment South Africa pushed back, Trump's allies pushed harder. American commentators claimed Ramaphosa was in denial. South African officials accused the US of pushing colonial narratives. The G20 committee scrambled to calm tensions. Suddenly, the summit's official agenda, climate action, economic recovery, global stability, took a back seat to this unexpected diplomatic explosion. Why Trump's words hit so hard? Because the topic he touched, land ownership and farm attacks, is one of the most emotionally charged issues in modern South African politics. Here's the truth. South Africa does have a serious crime problem. Farmers have been victims of violent attacks. Land redistribution has been a deeply divisive political issue for decades, but calling it a genocide is where the fire starts. South African leaders argue crime affects all communities. There is no evidence of an organized government plot. Trump's comments amplify fringe narratives. Trump's supporters argue the violence is underreported. Victims deserve global attention. The world ignores white minorities. And that's why this turned into a global screaming match. Neither side is backing down. Both sides think the other is spreading misinformation. And now the entire world is watching South Africa's internal struggles play out on the G20 stage. The media goes into overdrive. Within hours, headlines exploded. Trump accuses South Africa of genocide. Ramaphosa fires back at Trump. G20 leaders worried about escalating diplomatic clash. TikTok ran wild. Twitter became a battlefield. YouTube channels churned out theories, maps, charts, and political commentary. The world suddenly cared deeply about South Africa's land crisis, and that is the power of a single phrase spoken at the wrong time, in the wrong place, on the world's biggest diplomatic stage. G20 side meetings turn into shocking showdowns. When President Ramaphosa publicly responded to Trump's claim, the tension didn't stay on the main stage. Behind closed doors, several G20 side meetings ended up turning into surprisingly sharp exchanges. European diplomats reportedly tried to defuse the situation, urging both the US and South Africa to avoid emotional language. But South African representatives were furious. They felt the accusation was a direct attack on the country's stability, economy, and global reputation. Meanwhile, American advisors quietly defended Trump, insisting his remarks were based on concerns about violent crime and property rights. South African media erupts, a wave of national defense. Back home, South African news networks exploded in coverage. Every major panel, talk show, and political journalist went into full crisis response mode. Some commentators accused Trump of reviving apartheid-era stereotypes. Others took a more measured tone, acknowledging the seriousness of violent crime, but rejecting the term genocide entirely. Trump's supporters double down and turn it into a campaign issue. Back in the United States, Trump's political base didn't just support him, they amplified him. Conservative commentators, YouTubers, and talk show hosts began referring to the issue constantly. They framed Trump as the only world leader brave enough to call out violence that the mainstream press allegedly ignores. It became another lightning rod issue in the culture war. Campaign strategists quickly saw an opportunity. They emphasized themes of law and order, protecting property rights, and standing up to global elites. South Africa's land debate suddenly became a talking point at American rallies, something that shocked international observers. And that's what intensified the global divide. To Trump supporters, this was a moment of truth-telling. To South African leaders, this was reckless meddling. To neutral observers, it was political opportunism on both sides. The clash between Donald Trump and South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has officially become one of the most dramatic diplomatic flare-ups of the year, and one that will echo through global politics for months, maybe years. If you want more deep, factual, high-drama political breakdowns like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications. Because the geopolitical drama is only getting started, and you won't want to miss a single chapter.